Last game of the regular season. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Louisville Cardinals are back in action on Saturday for the final time in regular season play. They will host the Stanford Cardinal on Senior Day. Going to be an interesting matchup for Pat Kelsey's team, dealing with one of the best players in the conference. Maxime Reynaud has had a fantastic season, and he's going to be a tough test for the Louisville front court. We'll discuss Reyne Smith's injury and how it could impact the team in tomorrow's game. We'll also give a weekly bracketology update, the final one before postseason play starts next week. So all that coming up on the show today. The 14th ranked Louisville Cardinals go for their 9th consecutive victory and to end the season on a high note going into ACC Tournament play when they host the Stanford Cardinal at 2 p.m. at the KFC Yum Center. It is the first time that these two teams will match up as members of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and it is an opportunity for the Cardinals to send the seniors off in the right way. There are some ACC seeding implications and much more going on that we're going to preview here shortly. I think for starters, we have to give a huge thank you to all of the seniors. Now, there are some questions as to who can come back, who cannot. That's going to be something that we address in next week's weekly mailbag. So just a heads up there, we'll go into a little bit of a deeper dive into who can return, who can't, how many years of eligibility the players have, and much more. But Pat Kelsey gets a ton of praise and credit for his impact on this program, doing a complete 180, as he should. And this isn't an either-or situation, but the players deserve a ton of that credit as well. They deserve a ton of praise. Guys like Chucky Hepburn, Reyne Smith, Terrence Edwards Jr., Javon Hadley, all these guys have collectively contributed to this revival of the Cardinals program. And thank you really doesn't do enough for these players, what they've been able to accomplish in just a short amount of time, coming together as a team that everyone was new. It's been an incredible ride. I'm sad to see it. Let me preface this. I'm sad to see it end in terms of the game is being played at the Yum Center. The home games were fun again. The crowds were buying in. More and more people were showing up, and Card Nation is back. And it's awesome to see when you take into account what's happened over the past couple of years. So not done yet. The Cardinals going for their 9th straight win. There are some ACC seeding implications on the line in this game. If the Cardinals were to beat Stanford, they would get no less than a 2 seed in conference tournament play, which would be nice. If they lose, they would then need Clemson to lose as well, because they would still have the tiebreaker over the Tigers. But a win, and you're at least a 2 seed. Now, there is a situation and a scenario where you could end up being the 1 seed next week. You would have to win. Clemson would also have to win to initiate a 3-way tie. But the main thing you need is North Carolina to upset Duke in Chapel Hill on Saturday evening. Now, both of these teams play at 6 o'clock. So if Louisville wins, everyone will be watching the Tobacco Road matchup. Basically, that 3-way tie where Duke beat Louisville, Louisville beat Clemson, Clemson beat Duke. According to Kelly Dickey, stats and historical information aficionado, the Cardinals would get the 1 seed in the event of a 3-way tie because of the highest winning percentage against the top team. So it would eventually go down the line, and North Carolina would be the squad, and Louisville and Clemson would have 1-0 records against North Carolina, and Duke would be 1-1. So you would take them out of the equation, and then the Cardinals would have the head-to-head over Clemson. So you need some help. The reality is you just need to control what you can control, right? If you don't beat Stanford, it doesn't matter. So the focus has to be on winning the game. And Stanford is an interesting team. They are 19-11 overall. They're 7th in the ACC with an 11-8 record. They started the season out really good on a 6-0 winning streak. They lost 2 games to mid-major competition, and then they won 3 more. But then ACC play has been sort of up and down for them. They lost 3 straight games heading into full-time ACC play, and they've sort of just treaded water. They've won a couple games in a row. They've lost a couple games in a row. After losing to Georgia Tech and Duke in back-to-back games, they went on a 3-game winning streak against California, Boston College, and SMU, all of those 3 games at home. But then they lost at Notre Dame recently, 56-54 on Wednesday. So it's been an up and down year for the Cardinal. They are currently ranked just outside of the top 80 in the net ranking, number 82 as of yesterday. This is a quad 3 opportunity for the Cardinals, a quad 1 opportunity for the Cardinal. The main key to victory for Pat Kelsey's team is limiting Maxime Reynaud's impact. I think it's pretty safe to suggest that he is going to be a first-team All-ACC selection. The 7'1" senior from Paris is averaging 20.2 points a game. That's 17th in the country. 10.9 rebounds a game, which is 5th in the country. He's doing this on 47% shooting from the field, 33.8% from the three-point line, and 78.7% from the free throw line. And he's going to be an extremely tough matchup because anytime you have a 7'1" big man that can step out and shoot the ball as well as he can, 34% on 5 attempts from 3, that's a really good number. When he announced that he was going to the portal this past spring, I was like, Louisville's got to get this guy. And he was the name that we discussed on the show. Say, hey, look, this has got to be one of the top priorities. Now, he ended up ultimately going back to Stanford, but he's had a better year. He's improved each and every season. He does 2 things really well that the Cardinals struggle with particularly. The first thing is 3-point shooting defense. The Cardinals give up way too many open shots, not a great 3-point defense, and Reynaud, being 7'1", not only can score from the inside and be a terrific post threat, but even more so, what worries me is that on 5 attempts from 3, he's shooting 34%. So being able to stretch the floor, be deadly in those pick and roll situations, the pick and pop plays, he's a tough assignment to defend. It's going to be on James Scott and other players to really focus in on defending him, not getting in foul trouble, and to make matters more interesting, he rebounds really well. And Louisville has had some issues. They have given up way too many offensive rebounds. They gave up 20 to California. Now, California coming into the game was the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the ACC, almost top 25 in the country. But this isn't a one-game issue. Like, they struggled to limit the offensive rebounds against Florida State, against Pittsburgh, against California. Now, those teams play physical and they have more size than other ACC squads. However, that really doesn't make it right. So the Cardinals need to limit what he does on the floor. If there's a game in which you need to get a player in foul trouble, it's probably this one. Stanford as a whole doesn't shoot the ball all that well. 253rd in the country in field goal percentage, like 43.45%. You just have to limit the second chance opportunities, because if you do that, you're going to put yourself into a good situation. I look at this game and I'm thinking, if you go and look at the results from the past month or so, Stanford doesn't. They're 205th in points per game. They score about 74 a game. But you look at their losses, and a good amount of those, it's when they allow other teams to score over 70. The 3-game winning streak, California scored 61, Boston College scored 60, and SMU scored 68. And games with the Cardinal tend to be somewhat lower scoring. So to suggest that Louisville needs to get going offensively early on, I mean, that might seem like an obvious key to the game, but especially against a team that, if they give up a good amount of points, you're going to put them in a tough situation. And for me, that's what Louisville needs to focus on. Reynaud is a player that you have to limit what he's able to do, because he can definitely affect the game, but his success levels aren't always correlating and trickling over to team success, because the Cardinal have double-digit losses. They're 19-11. They're 7th in the ACC, and they're not in the NCAA tournament right now. I don't think that they're going to be, unless they were to win the conference tournament. So it's going to be a test that Louisville, by all means, should pass, and they should win this game. But it's not set in stone, right? One thing that I'm focusing on is the status of Reyne Smith. He went down with injury against California, didn't return to the game. What would Louisville need to do if they weren't able to have Reyne Smith for tomorrow's game? We'll discuss when we come back on this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a larger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, and whether I'm backing my Houston Rockets for a late-game rally or picking Jalen Green to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. One issue with previewing the matchup for Louisville is the status of Reyne Smith. He left early in the first half against California with an apparent lower leg injury, went back to the training room, and came back to the bench for the second half. He didn't come back in the game. Now, whether that was precautionary or he wasn't able to, we really don't know at this point. This show is being recorded early morning on Friday, so if we get any updates or developments within the day before this publishes at 5 o'clock, well, then understand that we didn't have that prior. We didn't have that knowledge prior. So at this point, I'm operating under the assumption that Reyne Smith is day-to-day and is questionable for Saturday's game. When you go back and watch how he got hurt, it looks like he landed awkwardly on the leg. Looks like a non-contact injury, and immediately went back to the training room. He was walking gingerly. I originally sort of feared that it could have been Achilles because of the way that he landed, but he wasn't immobile to the point to where I worried more about that than, let's say, a calf injury. It looked more like a calf injury. I thought maybe it could be the ankle. Doesn't really look like it because the ankle didn't turn or whatnot. It just looks like a calf injury. And those can be sort of tricky, and I won't act like I'm a doctor. I am a WebMD professional when I need to search what my symptoms are, and that is definitely one of my red flags, but that's a story for a different day. It's tough. It's tough to predict because we just don't know. And in the name of competitive advantage, that is not surprising. And I'm hoping that Reyne can give it a go, especially with his family in town, making the trip from Australia to watch Reyne play this week. So I would love to see him get sent off in his final game at the Yum Center on a high note. Now, if he plays, you imagine he's probably not going to be 100%. You have the immediate three-point shooting threat when he's in the game. But let's play the hypothetical and talk about what if he's severely limited or he just outright doesn't play. And it's a situation where, we'd rather have Reyne Smith for the future and we'll risk not playing him against Stanford because we should win anyway. And I don't know what that spread looks like at the moment because it's not out. But Louisville's going to be favored to win that game. I would say pretty decently. 10 points, and maybe not. I'd say 8.5. If he's not able to play, I think you're going to see Kani Roots get the majority of those minutes. When James Scott went down, he played over 20 minutes against Miami. When Reyne Smith went down against California, he also played over 20 minutes. Now, those are two of the three times that he has played over 20 minutes. But I would imagine that he gets the majority of the extra minutes in the rotation. You can assume that Hadley, Edwards, Hepburn are going to play upwards of 33, maybe even 35 minutes. James Scott will be playing his normal 29 to 32 minutes. Noah Waterman might get the start for Reyne, and he might play early on. And if he performs like he did against California, where he put in 18 minutes and had 6.6 rebounds, I think you need to play him more. And I think that ultimately this comes down to three players sort of splitting up those minutes. Noah Waterman, Kani Roots, and Abubakar Traore. And at the conclusion of yesterday's show, we explained why marginal improvements from all three of those players would go a long way in helping this team reach its ceiling. And I believe that. And with Reyne Smith potentially out, you need that. And I don't think it's just one player that is being relied upon to mask over the loss of Reyne Smith. I do think that there is some added emphasis on guys like Hepburn, Edwards, and Hadley. Also, Noah Waterman to shoot the ball better from three. Of course, Reyne Smith has a ton of gravity for the opposing defense because of how well he can shoot from three-point land. And when he wasn't in, teams almost dared Louisville to shoot. Like California just dared the Cardinals to shoot the ball. And thankfully, Terrence Edwards had a really good game where he was in the zone and he made 7 of 11 of his three-point attempts. You need him to have a good day from behind the arc. You need Chucky Hepburn to do the same, and you need Javon Hadley. I think if Javon Hadley knocks down a couple of three-pointers, it's icing on the cake for what he normally provides. But you also need players like Noah Waterman and Kani Roots to make their open shots because they are getting them. The duo was 1 for 4 from three-point line. Kani Roots is shooting, 24.5% from three-point land this year. Noah Waterman is shooting 26.4. It is completely below any number he's been at in his 5-year college career up until this point. Well, 6-year now. I mean, he's never shot under 32%, and now he's at 26.4. And I know that he's dealt with that injury, and he's playing with a brand new team and a brand new system, and there's a lot that comes into play here. But if he can get to a point to where, at the very least, he and Kani Roots are just knocking down open shots, knocking down open three-point looks because they're going to get them because of the attention that Hepburn and Edwards and Hadley draw, if you can knock down open shots and just a couple, let's say you go 2 for 4. Let's say Roots goes 2 for 4. Again, the improvements seem marginal, but they add up. And watching Waterman and Roots make shots, it's almost like, okay, now you have to respect what they're doing. It's like, yeah, is he getting an open shot for a reason? Are they playing Kenai Roots to anticipate him driving the basketball? What happens when he makes his first three or makes a couple and a half? Then you change the way teams have to play defense to where they can't, they can't put too much emphasis on one of the big three. They also have to respect Waterman and Roots from the three-point line. And if that happens, then I think that you can combat the loss of Reyne Smith and fill some of that production. It's like Moneyball. We can't recreate Reyne Smith, but we can, we can't replace Reyne Smith, but we can recreate him in the aggregate. Now, Reyne Smith is a guy that can knock down a ton of threes and not a ton of time. But if you are remaining serviceable from the three-point line, I think you do a lot of good for your team moving forward. So we'll see what his status looks like on Saturday. If we get an update on his status before this podcast airs, then understand that we didn't know beforehand. So when we come back, let's take a look at bracketology. Where do the Cardinals currently sit in some of the final projections before conference tournament play? We'll see. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level with the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds. It can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and even everything in between. With room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Over the past couple of weeks since Louisville lost to Georgia Tech in early February, they've been hovering around that 6 to 8 seed in bracketology projections. We'll take a look at the two newest ones that were released on Friday morning. Let's start with Joe Lunardi from ESPN. He released one at 9:30 on Friday. We're taking a look at where the Cardinals land. And if you were hoping that the Cardinals got off of the 7 seed line, well, you'd be happy to know that they are currently projected as a 6 seed in the South Regional. The number 1 seed is Auburn. Their first matchup would be against a first 4 opponent. The 11 seed is either San Diego State or Indiana, a team that the Cardinals handled very easily early on in the year. Now the Hoosiers have scratched and clawed their way back into tournament consideration to get back on the bubble. They played really well as of late. They would be a tough matchup the second time around because of the size that they have, Mackenzie Mbako, Omar Ballo, and other players. Now, if they won, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you best believe that the tournament makes some of these decisions based upon ratings and what would draw the most viewership. If they won that game, they would take on the winner of the 3 and the 14. The 14 is Towson. The 3 is St. John's. Talking about, well, could Louisville play Arkansas or Kentucky in the second round? Kind of forgot about St. John's. How would you like to see the first time that the Cardinals have made the tournament since 2019? They win a tournament game for the first time since 2017, and boom, you run into a really, really good veteran-led Rick Pitino squad. That would be a tough one. I would not like that matchup whatsoever. That would be in Providence up in the Northeast. So St. John's fans would make their way to that area. The 2 seed is Michigan State in this current hypothetical, the 4 and 5 Arizona and Oregon respectively, and then the South Regional, of course, is held in Atlanta. And if the Cardinals were somehow to make it to the second weekend, I do think that the fan presence down in the 404 would be pretty populated. I think there would be a lot of Louisville fans there. I don't really like this draw. I like that the Cardinals got a 6 seed. I don't like the possibility of playing Indiana a second time because of the potential there. I definitely don't like the potential to play St. John's, a team that plays really physical. They are one of the best enforcers in the country. You know that style of play that Pitino plays with. It would be a really, really tough matchup for the Cardinals, and I just don't like it. I don't like it. So of all of the 3 seeds, you have Iowa State, Texas A&M, and Wisconsin. Outside of maybe A&M, St. John's is the one team that I don't want to play on that 3 line. So let's take a look at Jerry Palm's projections from CBS. He updated his Friday morning at 7:46, and he has the Cardinals still on that 7 seed line, playing Baylor in Cleveland as the 7-10. The 2-15 is Michigan State and Robert Morris. Michigan State this season, they're 25-5, 16-3 in Big Ten play. They beat Maryland on a half-court buzzer beater last week. They are number 1 in the Big Ten at the moment. I have, if you look at the other 2 seeds, you have Wisconsin, Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan State. Michigan State and Alabama are the two seeds that, again, I don't want to have any part of because Michigan State's team is veteran-led. They're a tough team. They rebound well. They play good defense, and they just play together. And I think it would be a tough matchup. This game would be played in Cleveland. So, I mean, I honestly, I'll be completely transparent, guys. When we looked at the rest of the schedule with about 5 games to go and the Cardinals were a 7 seed, I felt like if they won out the final 5 games, they would get up to a 6 seed and start flirting with that 5 seed line. And I think it's pretty discouraging to see Louisville continue to win every single game. Other teams, despite, the conference play and the strength of schedule and conference play and the marquee wins, it's discouraging to see Louisville win every game and 1 game out of their last 19 and be 24-6 and be a 7 seed in some projections. So let's look at the net ranking. As of Thursday, when those games were happening, the Cardinals are at number 25. And that's kind of where they've been for the past 3 weeks or so. And I just think it reiterates that Louisville needs to make a decent run in the ACC tournament. They have to win the first game. I would argue that if you want a top 5 seed in a regional, you have to win the second game against Clemson as well. So we'll take a look at that bracketology a little bit more next week when we get into conference tournament play. But when we come back, we'll recap what happens on Senior Day for the Cardinals and much more. That's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. Make it to the Yum Center if you can to send these seniors off on a good note. We'll see you right back here next week. Go Cards.